Have you ever wondered if there's some kind of grand logical reason for, well, for everything? Today, we're going to dig into a fascinating theological model that frames our entire reality as a cosmic trial. And it all starts not with a big bang, but with a single, really tricky question that's almost impossible to answer. No, seriously, think about it for a second. If someone accused you, right now, of being secretly evil, how would you prove them wrong? You could list all the good things you've done, right? But they could just say, oh, that's just a cover. You could swear you're innocent, but they could just call you a liar. Well, in the theological framework we're looking at today, this exact problem is the spark that lights the fuse on a cosmic drama that defines our entire universe. So, to really get this, we've got to go back to the beginning. The story kicks off in a perfect reality, run by the top being, Yahweh. In this place, evil isn't just a bad idea, it's completely banned. I mean, we're talking total perfection, total order. But, as any good story will tell you, it's usually in these perfect places that the biggest problems start brewing. And bam, right in the middle of all this perfection, a being named Lucifer steps up. And this isn't some quiet complaint. This is a full-on public accusation. He demands that Yahweh step down so he can take over. And that one moment, right there, is the inciting incident that changes absolutely everything. But what's so interesting here is the reason for the accusation. Lucifer isn't just making a simple power grab. He's actually making a philosophical argument. He's claiming that by banning the very knowledge of evil, Yahweh is holding everyone back, limiting their freedom, and that this act of restriction is itself a form of evil. So this one accusation creates this huge cosmic problem. See, Yahweh can't just destroy Lucifer, because that might just look like he's proving Lucifer's point, a tyrant getting rid of anyone who disagrees. So instead, this challenge brings four huge, fundamental questions to the surface, questions that now have to be answered for the whole universe to see. And here they are, the big four. First, the real personal one. How does Yahweh prove he's not evil? Second, the practical question. In a universe that has never even seen evil, how do you prove it's actually a bad thing? Third, the containment problem. How do you let evil exist for a test without it, leaking out and destroying everything? And finally, the big one for the future. How do you create co-rulers who are guaranteed never, ever to rebel like this again? These four questions basically become the blueprint for everything that happens next. Okay, so how in the world do you answer questions that big? Well, the solution, according to this model, is actually pretty brilliant. Instead of getting into some endless debate, Yahweh decides to run an experiment. But an experiment this risky needs a special lab, a safe, totally isolated place where the chaos of evil can play out. And that's where the sandbox world comes in. The best way to think about it is like a computer simulation we might build to test a really dangerous AI. The idea is that it's a real place with real beings, but it's completely cut off from the main reality. It's a quarantine zone, making sure the experiment can run its course without causing permanent, universe-wide damage. So what are the rules of this sandbox? Well, for one, it's designed to look ancient and huge so that massive cosmic events seem plausible and not just like someone's pulling strings. And that's a key point. God steps back from direct control. And in a direct answer to Lucifer's challenge, this new world is going to be ruled by its own people, humans, not by Yahweh. All right, the sandbox is built so the experiment can finally get underway. This next part is all about the key players inside this world and the tests that are set up to finally answer those big cosmic questions. And for this test, a brand new kind of being is created, the trinitarian human. In this framework, humanity isn't some cosmic accident. We were purpose-built for this trial. Our very nature is the key to the whole experiment. Now, how we're built is absolutely crucial. We've got a spirit, which is our true self. We have a body, which is like our avatar for interacting with this sandbox world. And where those two things meet, a third thing pops into existence, the soul. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Evil can actually corrupt and change our spirit, and once our body is gone, that spiritual state is locked in forever. I mean, the stakes just could not be higher. So the first two humans, Adam and Eve, are given a very clear choice, and it perfectly represents the two sides of the whole cosmic argument. On one side, Yahweh warns them, evil will kill you. On the other side, Lucifer slides in and says, nah, evil won't hurt you. God is just holding you back. The test is on. And what happened? Adam and Eve chose to believe Lucifer. And with that one decision, they willingly threw open the door to evil, letting it flood into themselves and into the whole sandbox world. The experiment had officially begun, and Lucifer's request to see what evil was all about was granted. But this outcome was actually planned for. The model has this principle called symmetric justice. The logic goes like this. Since humanity got into this evil mess because of the failure of one champion, Adam, it's only fair to give a new, perfect champion a shot to reverse it. This is where Jesus comes into the story. The model suggests that God basically clones his own nature. And this is super important. It's not his all-knowing mind or his power, but his essential character, and puts it into a human body. This creates the perfect test subject, a second Adam ready to face off against the original accuser. And the tension here is just off the charts. Lucifer's entire goal is to find just one tiny little speck of evil in this new champion, because if he succeeds, he doesn't just beat a man, he proves that God's own nature is flawed. The whole cosmic argument, the claim to the universe, it all comes down to this one showdown. And the result is decisive. Absolutely no evil is found in Jesus. He passes the test perfectly. And in that single moment, Lucifer's core accusation that Yahweh is evil and that his way is wrong is publicly and completely defeated. The argument is over. Lucifer lost. So let's check the scoreboard. What did this whole experiment prove? Well, first, it proved that Yahweh's nature is not evil. Check. Second, it let evil be experienced, but in a contained way. Check. And third, through all the pain and suffering that played out in the sandbox, it showed all of creation just how bad evil really is. Check. 3 questions down. 1 to go. But wait, the experiment isn't done. We still have that 4th super important question. How do you find beings who are safe enough to co-rule for all of eternity? I mean, after all this, how do you make absolutely sure another rebellion never, ever happens again? To solve this last piece of the puzzle, you have to look at what went wrong in the first place. The real core failure of both Lucifer and Adam wasn't just that they did something wrong. It was a lack of faith. Even when they were in a perfect world, surrounded by proof of God's goodness, they chose to doubt. That is the final problem that needs to be solved. And this leads to the really mind-bending logic of our reality, according to this model. To create beings with rock-solid, unshakable faith, the test conditions have to be the total opposite of that first paradise. The world has to seem broken and messy. God has to be hidden so that believing is a real choice, not just a reaction to obvious proof. The thinking here is profound. If a person can bring themselves to trust in God's goodness in a world like this one, full of pain and doubt, they will never, ever doubt him in a perfect one. They've passed the ultimate safety test. And so this whole framework leaves us with this final, really provocative idea, that the suffering and the brokenness of our world aren't some cosmic mistake. They are the deliberate, necessary features of a filter designed to solve the very last problem of creation, finding souls who can finally be trusted with perfection forever. A pretty fascinating and definitely challenging way to look at everything.